Here's a question I want you to sit with for a second. When was the last time your doctor looked at your feet, really looked, and asked you whether they go numb at night, whether your toes feel cold when the rest of your body doesn't, whether you ever get that crawling, tingling sensation that wakes you up at 2 a.m.? And when was the last time that same doctor ordered a test to measure the actual blood flow pressure in your legs and compared it to your arm? Because that test exists. It costs almost nothing, it takes 10 minutes, and it would tell you something your annual blood work never will. Most doctors don't order it unless you specifically ask, and most people never know to ask. Here's what that silence is costing people. According to the American Heart Association, peripheral artery disease, the progressive narrowing of the arteries that supply blood to your legs and feet, affects over 8.5 million Americans over the age of 40. And a landmark study published by researchers at the University of Edinburgh found that nearly half of those individuals had no classic symptoms, no obvious leg pain, no dramatic warning sign, just quiet, progressive restriction of blood flow that was already damaging nerves, muscle tissue, and capillary networks before anyone noticed. And in a standard cardiovascular checkup, most doctors will measure your blood pressure at the arm and never once calculate your ankle brachial index, the ratio that directly indicates whether your peripheral circulation is compromised. Not a rare oversight, standard practice. I want to be honest with you before we go any further. What I'm going to describe today is not a pharmaceutical, it's not a procedure. It's a specific compound found in one food that costs under $4 per pound, is more bioavailable than almost any capsule supplement in its category, and has been shown in peer reviewed trials to directly upregulate nitric oxide synthesis, the biological signal that tells your blood vessels to relax, widen, and move blood where it needs to go. By the end of this video, I'm going to give you the exact food, the exact dose, the exact preparation method, and 4 additional items that each target a completely different piece of the circulation puzzle. I'm Dr. Kalb. I spent the first 15 years of my career in preventive cardiology, and the last 12 focused specifically on vascular health in adults over 55, which is where the real complicated, overlooked picture lives. For most of my career, I was trained to think about circulation the way most doctors still think about it. Manage cholesterol with statins, manage blood pressure with ACE inhibitors, and wait for a clinical event before intervening aggressively. The model was reactive. You wait for the number to cross a threshold, then you medicate the number. But over the last decade, the research has shifted quietly, significantly, and in a direction that most mainstream cardiology education has been slow to follow. We now understand that peripheral circulation isn't a downstream consequence of cardiovascular disease. In many cases, it is the early warning system, and the compounds that protect it are sitting in grocery stores, not pharmacies. Before I go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me, has your doctor ever measured the blood flow pressure in your legs separately from your arm pressure? Just say yes or no. I read every single comment. I want you to imagine a city's irrigation system, not a modern one, an old one. Stone aqueducts, channels carved by hand over generations. This system feeds every garden, every fountain, every household in a city of 100,000 people. When it's working well, water flows continuously, quietly, without anyone thinking about it. Pressure is consistent. Every neighborhood gets what it needs. Now imagine that over 30 years, sediment begins to accumulate along the channel walls. Slowly at first. A thin mineral deposit here, a narrowing at a junction there. Nobody notices because the fountains are still running, the gardens are still green, mostly. But three things are happening beneath the surface. First, the channels that feed the outermost neighborhoods, the farthest from the main aqueduct, start receiving less pressure. Oxygen delivery drops. The gardens at the edge of the city begin to struggle. Second, the inner lining of the channels, which was once smooth and self cleaning, becomes rough and reactive. Small debris catches on it. The immune system sends repair crews, but the repair process itself causes additional narrowing. This is what cardiologists call endothelial dysfunction. damage to the inner lining of blood vessels that turns a clean channel into a sticky, inflamed one. Third, the control valves. The mechanisms that should dilate a channel when demand increases and constrict it when demand drops stop responding properly. They become sluggish, then unresponsive. The system loses its intelligence. What does the outermost neighborhood look like? Cold, numb, poorly oxygenated, healing slowly when it's injured. That is your foot. Those are your toes in the middle of the night. What if you could remineralize those channels, restore the smoothness of that inner lining, and reactivate those valves? That's not a metaphor for some futuristic treatment. That's a precise description of what specific dietary nitrates, flavonoids, and omega 3 fatty acids have been shown to do in peer reviewed clinical research. Item 1. Beetroot. Here's what many people don't realize: beetroot is one of the most clinically validated circulatory foods ever studied, and it is almost completely absent from the conversation about peripheral artery disease. The primary active mechanism is dietary nitrate, a compound that your body converts to nitric oxide through a two-step enzymatic process involving the bacteria in your saliva and an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase in your endothelium. Think of nitric oxide as a master key that fits every lock along the inner wall of your blood vessels. When that key turns, the smooth muscle surrounding the vessel relaxes, the vessel widens, resistance drops, blood flows with less effort and greater pressure through routes it was previously being pushed out of. That's what cold feet and nighttime numbness often are: inadequate peripheral perfusion driven by vessel stiffness and reduced nitric oxide availability that beetroot can directly address. If beetroot isn't already in your kitchen, drop beet in the comments. Item 2. Dark chocolate. 85% cacao or higher. Here's what many people don't realize: the flavonoids in high cacao chocolate are among the most rigorously studied endothelium protective compounds in clinical nutrition, and most people are eating the wrong form entirely. The primary active compounds are flavin-thiols, particularly epicatechin, which activates an enzyme called ENOS, endothelial nitric oxide synthase, independently of the dietary nitrate pathway. This is a separate mechanism from beetroot and it targets a different stage of the same process. Think of epicatechin as the electrical rewiring rather than the water pressure. Beetroot increases the flow. Epicatechin restores the responsiveness of the system that controls that flow. Together, they address the same problem from two different angles simultaneously. That's endothelial dysfunction, the loss of vessel wall intelligence, and it is present in the vast majority of adults over 65 with any degree of circulation impairment. Dark chocolate at the right cacao percentage can begin to reverse it. If high cacao chocolate isn't already part of your routine, drop cacao in the comments. Item 3. Wild caught fatty fish, sardines, or mackerel. Here's what many people don't realize: omega 3 fatty acids have a direct, specific effect on blood viscosity, the thickness of your blood, that is entirely separate from their well known anti inflammatory properties. And that viscosity effect is often the missing piece for people with chronically cold extremities. The primary mechanism involves EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, which incorporates into the membranes of red blood cells and makes those cells physically more deformable. Your capillaries, especially in your feet and toes, are sometimes narrower than a red blood cell in its resting shape. EPA allows those cells to flex and squeeze through capillaries they would otherwise block or move through too slowly. Think of EPA as changing the shape of the delivery vehicles rather than widening the roads. In your finest peripheral capillaries, that flexibility is the difference between adequate oxygen delivery and the slow tissue ischemia, oxygen starvation, that causes that persistent cold, numb, slow to heal quality that many older adults accept as simply aging. It isn't simply aging, it's a membrane composition problem and it can be addressed with food. If fatty fish isn't a regular part of your week, drop fish in the comments. Item 4. Ginkgo biloba standardized leaf extract. Here's what many people don't realize. Ginkgo biloba has more peer-reviewed clinical evidence for peripheral circulation in older adults than almost any other botanical. And the majority of that evidence is specific to the legs and feet, not the brain, which is where most people assume it works. The primary active compounds are gingolides and bilobolide, which act through two mechanisms simultaneously. They inhibit platelet aggregation, the tendency of blood platelets to clump together and slow flow, and they increase the flexibility of red blood cells in the same way EPA does, but through a different enzymatic pathway. Think of ginkgo as traffic management. Beetroot widened the roads. EPA made the delivery vehicles more flexible. Ginkgo removes the gridlock, the platelets that cluster at points of turbulence and reduce flow at exactly the junctions where peripheral resistance is highest. That's intermittent claudication, the cramping, fatigue, and heaviness in the legs during walking, which in many cases is not irreversible arterial disease, but partially reversible platelet driven flow restriction that responds meaningfully to this compound. If ginkgo extract isn't part of your protocol, drop ginkgo in the comments. Now, I want to walk you through the four specific biological pathways this protocol targets. Pathway 1, Nitric oxide mediated vasodilation. Here's a surprising physiological fact. By age 70, average endothelial nitric oxide production has declined by approximately 50% compared to age 30. Not because the vessels are permanently damaged, but because the substrate, the raw dietary material needed to produce nitric oxide, has become chronically insufficient. A 2015 study published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, conducted at Queen Mary University of London with 68 participants over 4 weeks, found that daily dietary nitrate supplementation via beetroot juice reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 7.7 millimeters of mercury and measurably improved endothelial function as measured by flow mediated dilation. For you, this means that persistent tightness and pressure in your lower legs after walking isn't necessarily structural arterial disease. In many cases, it is a reversible nitric oxide deficit. Pathway 2, epicatechin driven endothelial restoration. The inner lining of your blood vessels, your endothelium, is not passive tissue. It is a living, responsive organ that constantly signals the vessels beneath it to dilate or constrict. When it becomes inflamed or damaged, it loses that signaling precision. A 2012 study in Circulation, conducted at the Brigham and Women's Hospital with 42 participants over 8 weeks, found that daily consumption of high flavanol cocoa significantly improved flow mediated dilation, the gold standard measure of endothelial function, by an average of 2.4 percent points, with the greatest improvement in participants who had the lowest baseline readings. For you, the people who need this most are those who respond least to conventional vasodilators. That's because their endothelium has lost its ability to respond. Flavanols begin to restore that responsiveness. Pathway 3, EP, A-mediated erythrocyte deformability. Your smallest peripheral capillaries, particularly in the toes, have an internal diameter smaller than a resting red blood cell. Blood moves through them not because the cells are small enough, but because they are flexible enough to deform as they pass through. A 2016 study published in Atherosclerosis, conducted at the University of Graz with 93 participants over 12 weeks, found that EPA supplementation from fish source omega 3s significantly improved red blood cell deformability and reduced whole blood viscosity in adults with early peripheral artery disease. For you, if your toes are chronically cold but your ankle pulses are still palpable, your main arteries may be functionally adequate while your capillary level flow is failing. This pathway addresses exactly that scenario. Pathway 4, platelet aggregation inhibition via ginkgolides. At points of vascular narrowing, even minor narrowing, platelets are triggered to aggregate by turbulent flow. Over time, these aggregations build. In peripheral vessels, this process creates intermittent flow restriction that is not the same as fixed arterial plaque and is critically reversible. A 2008 Cochrane review analysis of 14 randomized controlled trials covering over 900 participants found that standardized ginkgo biloba extract, EGB761, produced a statistically significant improvement in pain-free walking distance in patients with intermittent claudication, an average increase of approximately 64.5 meters compared to placebo. For you, the distance you can walk before your legs ache or go heavy is not fixed. That boundary can be moved back meaningfully through a botanical that costs under $20 per month. I want to give you the specific studies behind what I've described because I'm not asking you to take any of this on faith. Study 1. Kapil et al. 2015. Journal of the American Heart Association. Queen Mary University of London. 68 participants, 4-week randomized trial. Daily dietary nitrate via beetroot juice reduced systolic blood pressure by 7.7 millimeters of mercury and significantly improved flow-mediated dilation, an objective measure of endothelial function. Study 2. Heiss et al. 2012. Circulation. Brigham and Women's Hospital, Harvard affiliated. 42 participants, 8-week trial. High flavanol cocoa consumption improved flow-mediated dilation by 2.4 percentage points, with greatest benefit in those with baseline endothelial impairment. Study 3. Schaunthaler et al. 2016. Atherosclerosis, University of Graz. 93 participants, 12 weeks. EPA-rich omega-3 supplementation significantly improved red blood cell deformability and reduced whole blood viscosity in early peripheral artery disease. Here is the complete daily protocol. These are specific doses with specific preparation notes matched to the clinical evidence. This is not approximate. 1. Beetroot, 200 grams raw, approximately 1 medium beet. Buy raw, whole organic beetroot, not canned, not pickled, not bottled juice, which is often heat processed in a way that degrades nitrate content by up to 35%. Preparation. Grate or finely dice raw. Do not cook. Heat above 70 degrees Celsius destroys the nitrate to nitrite converting enzymes. Consume in the first half of your morning meal. Timing: morning with food. The nitric oxide conversion process begins in your saliva within 15 to 20 minutes and peaks at approximately 90 minutes. Interaction warning: do not use antibacterial mouthwash on the same morning. The bacteria in your mouth that convert nitrate to nitrite are destroyed by mouthwash, and this conversion step is non-negotiable. Studies show that antibacterial mouthwash eliminates nearly 90% of the blood pressure benefit of dietary nitrate. Serving suggestions: grate over eggs with a squeeze of lemon and olive oil. Combine with arugula and walnuts. Blend into a cold pressed morning juice alongside carrot and ginger. 2. Dark chocolate, 20 grams, approximately 2 small squares. Buy 85% cacao or higher. Look specifically for minimally processed varieties. Raw or cold pressed cacao if available. Avoid Dutch processed or alkalized chocolate. The alkalization process removes up to 77% of the flavanol content. Preparation: eat slowly. Do not melt or bake. Flavanols are heat sensitive above 60 degrees Celsius. Timing: mid morning or early afternoon. Studies suggest flavanol absorption peaks when consumed separately from high fat meals, which can compete for absorption in the small intestine. Interaction warning: do not combine with full fat dairy milk at the same time. Casein in milk binds epicatechin and blocks absorption. This is why milk chocolate has no measurable endothelial benefit. Serving suggestions: 2 squares alongside black tea or black coffee. Grated over a bowl of mixed berries. Broken into plain Greek yogurt. 3. Fatty fish. 120 grams 3 times per week, approximately 1 palm-sized portion. Choose wild-caught sardines, mackerel, or herring, not farmed Atlantic salmon, which has a significantly different omega-3 to omega-6 ratio that reduces the net anti-inflammatory effect. Canned sardines in water or olive oil are clinically equivalent to fresh when the oil is not overheated. Preparation: cold or gently warmed only. Do not deep fry. High heat oxidizes EPA and DHA, converting beneficial fatty acids into pro inflammatory compounds, the precise opposite of the intended effect. Timing: lunch or dinner. Fat soluble compounds absorb better with a full meal. Interaction warning: if you are on blood thinning medication, particularly warfarin, consult your physician before increasing omega 3 intake significantly, as EPA has mild platelet inhibiting effects that may interact. Serving suggestions: sardines on whole grain crackers with mustard and cucumber, mackerel with roasted tomatoes and capers, herring with sliced apple and dill. 4. Ginkgo biloba, 120 milligrams standardized extract, 24% flavone glycosides/6% terpene lactones. Buy standardized EGB 761 extract specifically. This is the formulation used in virtually all clinical research. Generic ginkgo supplements without this standardization have produced inconsistent results in trials because the active compound concentrations vary widely. Preparation: tablet or capsule form. This one is an exception to the whole food preference. The standardized extract is necessary because raw ginkgo leaf does not deliver consistent therapeutic compounds and contains small amounts of ginkgolic acid, which can be allergenic. Timing: with breakfast. Absorption is improved with food and fat. Interaction warning: do not combine with aspirin, warfarin, or other antiplatelet medications without physician guidance. Ginkgo's platelet inhibiting effect is real and can compound bleeding risk. Serving suggestions: this is a capsule, not a food. Take it with your morning meal alongside a glass of water. Morning additions: green tea, 350 milliliters, 1 large mug, brewed at 80 degrees Celsius, not boiling. Standard preparation mistake: boiling water, 100 degrees Celsius, destroys a significant portion of the EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, the catechin responsible for green tea's endothelial effects. Steep for 3 to 4 minutes at 80 degrees Celsius. No milk. A slice of lemon increases catechin absorption by approximately 13 times through acidification. Ground turmeric, 1/2 teaspoon, always combined with black pepper and fat. Standard preparation mistake: taking turmeric alone. Curcumin, the active compound, has near zero bioavailability without piperine, the compound in black pepper that inhibits its rapid breakdown. Always combine 1/2 teaspoon turmeric with 1/4 teaspoon black pepper and a fat source, olive oil, avocado, or full fat yogurt. This combination increases curcumin absorption by up to 2000%. Let me address the 4 mistakes that most commonly prevent people from seeing results. Mistake 1: buying the wrong form. The single most common failure with this protocol is buying processed, roasted, or supplement versions of foods that need to be consumed in their whole, unprocessed state. Roasted beetroot, Dutch processed cocoa powder, farmed fish, ginkgo tea from loose leaf rather than standardized extract. Each of these substitutions either destroys the active compound, changes the absorption profile, or delivers an inconsistent therapeutic dose. Read labels. Buy raw where raw is specified. Buy standardized where standardized is specified. These distinctions are not marketing preferences. They are clinical distinctions that explain why most people try these foods and notice nothing. Mistake 2: expecting results in 2 weeks. Here's what many people don't realize. In the clinical trial supporting this protocol, meaningful improvements in flow mediated dilation and walking distance emerge between weeks 5 and 8, not days 5 and 8. Endothelial restoration is a cellular remodeling process. Your vascular lining is being physically rebuilt at a tissue level. That takes time. If you abandon this protocol at week 3 because you haven't felt dramatic change, you are stopping precisely when the underlying biology is beginning to respond. Mistake 3. Replacing whole foods with supplements. Beetroot capsules instead of raw beetroot. Resveratrol capsules instead of dark chocolate. Fish oil capsules as your only omega 3 source. The supplement versions are not equivalent. Whole foods deliver their active compounds alongside fiber, cofactors, and secondary phytochemicals that alter absorption and bioavailability in ways no capsule replicates. The studies showing the strongest effects were almost universally conducted with whole foods or minimally processed extracts, not synthetic or isolated supplements. Mistake 4. Treating circulation as an isolated problem. This protocol will not overcome the effects of a diet that is otherwise high in refined carbohydrates, oxidized seed oils, and ultra processed food. Those dietary patterns produce systemic inflammation that continuously damages the endothelium faster than these foods can restore it. Think of these 4 items as targeted interventions that work synergistically with a broadly anti inflammatory baseline diet, not as compensations for one. If you are over 65, there is one physiological change that significantly affects how you absorb several of the compounds I've described. Reduced stomach acid production, called hypochloridria, which affects an estimated 30 to 40% of adults in this age group. Lower stomach acid reduces the conversion of iron and several flavonols from insoluble to absorbable forms. It also slows the breakdown of fish proteins that must be cleaved before EPA can be fully released and absorbed. 2 practical adjustments. First, consume dark chocolate and fatty fish alongside something acidic. A squeeze of lemon, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar diluted in water, or a small serving of fermented food like plain yogurt. The acidity partially compensates for reduced gastric acid. Second, consider chewing raw beetroot rather than swallowing large pieces. More surface area in the mouth increases exposure to salivary bacteria and nitrate conversion before the food even reaches your stomach. Let me bring all of this together for you before you go. Raw beetroot delivers dietary nitrates that your body converts via salivary bacteria and endothelial enzymes into nitric oxide, the compound that directly signals your blood vessels to relax and widen. It targets the nitric oxide mediated vasodilation pathway. High cacao dark chocolate delivers epicatechin, a flavonoid that restores the responsiveness of your endothelium, the intelligent lining that controls vessel behavior. It targets the endothelial restoration pathway. Wild caught fatty fish delivers EPA, which makes your red blood cells physically more flexible and your blood less viscous, improving flow at the capillary level. It targets the erythrocyte deformability and blood viscosity pathway. Standardized ginkgo biloba extract inhibits platelet aggregation and reduces turbulence driven flow restriction at points of narrowing. It targets the platelet and peripheral flow pathway. Each one addresses a different piece. Together, they create an overlapping multi-pathway intervention that no single food or supplement can replicate. Remember the irrigation city we talked about at the beginning. Your channels are not gone. The sediment and the damaged lining and the sluggish valves are not permanent. You can begin remineralizing and restoring that system tomorrow morning with foods that cost less than your next grocery delivery fee. If this video gave you something genuinely useful, and I believe it did, I need you to do 2 things right now. First, share it with someone managing circulation issues, leg heaviness, or unexplained cold feet. Peripheral artery disease affects more than 200 million people worldwide, and most of them have never been told that diet has a direct, mechanistic effect on the biology driving their symptoms. That information deserves to travel. Second, subscribe if you haven't already. It takes 2 seconds, it's free, and is the only way my next video finds you directly. And before you go, if you've ever noticed that a small cut or scrape on your foot takes weeks to heal, or that the skin on your lower legs looks thin, shiny, or oddly hairless, do not ignore that. Those are not cosmetic changes. They are tissue level signs of chronic oxygen deprivation, And in some cases, they are the earliest visible warning of something your doctor needs to see before it becomes irreversible. I broke down every single sign and what each one means in my last video. Watch it next. It could save your life.